Welcome to Raise the Line with Osmosis.org, seeking solutions with leading experts on how to increase healthcare capacity so people can get the care they need during the COVID-19 crisis and beyond.
Hi, I'm Shiv Gaglani, and today on Raise the Line, I'm really happy to be joined by Mandy Hill, who's the Managing Director of Academic Publishing at Cambridge University Press, where she is responsible for the quality, development, and performance of the publishing programs worldwide. We featured a lot of very new companies on Raise the Line, and it's really interesting to be able to feature someone who represents an organization that was founded in 1534, with their 500th anniversary coming up in just 14 years. And so while Mandy hasn't been through a lot of pandemics, certainly the organization has, and I'm very interested to hear how it's adapted over the years. So in Mandy's career, she's worked for some of the most prestigious publishers in the world, including Oxford University Press and Elsevier, and she started her career with a focus on medicine and science, which is why we're talking today. I'm looking forward to speaking with her about the evolving role of medical authors among related topics. And as a side note, Mandy and I were introduced by Al Cassio of the U.S. office of Cambridge University Press, who I met at the ASU GSV conference. So I'm really grateful to Al for making that introduction. So Mandy, thanks so much for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
So can you start by telling us a bit more about your background and what got you into publishing in the first place?
Yeah, certainly. So I did a degree in biochemistry in Bath University in the UK. Knew that I didn't want to do a PhD, wondered what I was going to do with a degree in biochemistry. So like many people in the publishing industry, I kind of fell into it without really knowing what I was getting myself into. But I guess that, the fact I've been in this industry now 30 years tells you that I like it, and it's worked really well for me. And I think one of the things that I was really drawn to, having done a degree in biochemistry, and all the way through that, I was drawn into the medical sciences. I felt that with publishing, I was able to use my degree, tap into the fact that I loved the sciences, the medical sciences, stay connected to what was going on. So it was a way for me to stay connected, but without needing to do a PhD. And I think that one of the things that I've always enjoyed about having a career in publishing is you are staying connected, but you feel like you're helping inform debates and move things forward, ensure that people are getting the information they need. So you feel like you're making a difference. So it's been an incredibly rewarding industry to be part of. And it's changed a lot over those 30 years, which has kept it really interesting.
Well, I'd love to hear, in your personal experience over those 30 years, what are some of the milestones and inflection points of change that you've seen? And we'll obviously get to COVID in a bit, but first, pre-COVID, pre-2020, what are some of the changes, including, I'm sure, the digitization that you're going to talk about?
Absolutely. I mean, so when I started in publishing back in the early 90s, I started in a production department, copy editing with a pen in my hand and paper in front of me. Somebody sent us a floppy disk. We threw it in the bin. No one had computers on their desks. So that's the environment I started publishing in. When we started putting journals online in the mid 90s, sticking a PDF online was exciting. A flat PDF up online. And if someone found it, you got really excited. And now, of course, having our content online isn't enough. It's how accessible you make it, the functionality you add to ensure it's really meeting user needs, thinking about how we can extend that and make sure it's accessible and informative for as many people as possible, and making sure that the right people find the right content to meet their needs as quickly as possible. All of that just makes it so much more exciting. And then, of course, it's opening up the opportunity for new business models as well. So open access is the other big topic of conversation for many of us in publishing. And that's only possible because of content being available online. So I think when we think about those inflection points, journals going online, 10 years later, content for books going online, and then all of that opening up the opportunities for open access, which started in the early 2004, something like that. There's some big changes.
Yeah, no, certainly. I'm definitely, things like Wikipedia going online and completely changing how people, at least Encyclopedia Britannica, how people engage with printed encyclopedias and now having a living, breathing type of reference, which also opens up the doors for trust issues, right? Credibility issues. I'm very curious what your thoughts are on how that has changed and how, one of the most trusted brands in the world, if not the most trusted publishing house, the Queen's Printer, I believe you all are called. How do you view that and, the balance between being first or being recent and updating content versus being trustworthy?
Yeah, it's a really great point and so important. And I remember the launch of Wikipedia and just thinking, why would anyone trust this? Why would you go to get information from Wikipedia? You know, clearly you're going to use a trusted source where you know experts have written that content. But we all use those sources now. We all just take it for granted that you can go online and access information. But I do think that for many of our users, they've become quite discerning about when do you want a quick answer and when do you want an answer that you know is right. If I want a recipe, I'm going online and I'm finding the first thing. If I wanted to understand the treatment that I was getting from my doctor, I'm not going to trust Wikipedia for that. That's personal. So I think that sense of how important is that information to you? How important is its accuracy? I think in those early days, people didn't have that understanding of when did it matter. And now I think people have become much more expert in their use of content. And largely, I think people are more discerning about when they use different sources. So you're right. As Cambridge University Press, peer review is absolutely central to who we are. Everything we publish, everything we all of our contracts are approved by the syndicate, which are academics within the university. That bar of quality that they set for us is fundamental and really informs the way we behave. And I think it does add to that trust and means that when somebody, whether it's a researcher, a patient, a student, accesses our information, they know that they can trust it. And that matters to us as part of the press. It gives us a sense of pride in what we're doing because people can rely on the information they get from us.
Yeah, I could totally see that. And as someone who's read many of your publications, it matters that there's that peer review process. Now, what are some of the titles you personally are most proud of bringing to audiences? And can you give us a bit of a sense of the scope as far as how many titles, how many authors in your database, and then also any measurement of like how many students or researchers or even the public that you believe you all have reached?
Yeah, no, it's great questions. And the data is one of those things that is becoming much more accessible for us. In the bad old paper days, you'd send out paper copies and you never knew whether books and journals stayed in their wrappers and never made it off a shelf or whether they were being intensely read. Whereas now we can get that data. And it really matters to us because it informs what we do next. So in terms of the number of books we publish, we have over 30,000 books on our catalogue. We publish 1,500 books a year. We publish over 400 journals, about 30,000 journal articles a year. So that's sort of output. In terms of usage, and I'm not going to remember the usage article numbers offhand, but we're talking in the millions of downloads. Our content is, and that's just growing by 15 to 20% every year. And in fact, I think there's a 25% increase in our online usage last year. So it really just shows this significant uplift that people want access to high quality information. And this comes back to the point you were making earlier. People can access information in lots of different ways. But when we're seeing that significant increase in our usage all of the time, that tells us that people want access to high quality information and it really matters to them.
Yeah, 100%. And so with 30,000 titles and 1,500 new a year, that's a lot of potential authors to look at and select. One of the most famous authors Cambridge has published was actually during one of the major pandemics, Isaac Newton. He wound up writing some of his most seminal work during a major pandemic, and then Cambridge published that work. Hopefully there will be some awesome titles coming up next year as a result of people having more time to be their modern day Isaac Newtons. But how do you personally screen for and select great medical authors and science authors and contributors with that much volume coming your way?
Yeah, so we have a team of really talented commissioning editors who know their subjects well and really spend time with their authors to understand the proposal. So the process is often that an author will have an idea, we'll discuss it with a commissioning editor. The commissioning editor will help them hone that idea, and we send that out for peer review. We don't send everything out for peer review. So for any budding author out there who's sending their book proposal into us, don't be disheartened if we don't even send it out for peer review, because it happens to many titles. We just will say, whatever reason, this isn't the right title for us, or sometimes we're not the right publisher for you. We can spot if there's a title that actually there's a different publisher who's got a different list that it would work better for them. So we will take it through peer review, which means we're sending out to, it can be as many as, for textbooks, it could be 10 to 15 references we'll get on a book before we even accept it. Once we've contracted a textbook, it then goes through a development process so that each individual chapter is going out for review and development all of the time to make it better and better, and making sure it's really hitting those pedagogical marks and is achieving what it's supposed to achieve. And I think that process of real engagement with authors, we're not just taking a proposal and publishing it, we're working with authors to ensure it's really making an impact, whether that's a research impact or whether that's a clinical impact. We want to ensure that it's achieving those goals.
Yeah, and one analogy I've often heard of is, authors to publishers as artists, music artists are to record labels, right? In terms of the gating function and how you get that massive distribution. One interesting thing about what YouTube did and Twitter and social media, MySpace did to artists is that oftentimes they have to bring their own audience. They have to come in with a following for a record label to be interested, because it kind of de-risks and proves there's already an audience here. Let's amplify it. I'm curious, does that ever play a role? Like, how do you see authors of, whether it's journal articles or actual books, coming to Cambridge Press, University Press, bringing in their own following? Does that ever play a role?
Yeah, and it's really interesting because I think so for journal authors, I don't think that is such a factor, because the number of articles, and also there tends to be a much more specific community that a journal article is targeted at. For many textbooks and books that are targeted at the sort of more trade audience, then the social media presence of an author really can make a huge difference. And I think, when a book is published by somebody who already has that social media profile, that book gets an immediate bump up. That a publisher's activity can never reach the same people in the same way. What we do supplements that and complements and builds on that. But it gets to people, gets out to an audience in a completely different way. We see that with one of our big authors on our medical list, Stephen Stahl, who is just an amazing profile builder and has such a following. And everything he says is followed by so many people. So we know as soon as we publish one of his books, bang, it's out there. And that, as I say, then the publishing promotions complement and build on that in addition. And so it really does matter to us. It does depend on the type of book. Certainly our trade books we love it when an author has a positive following in social media. It can be very beneficial.
No, definitely. I mean, Al introduced me to Dr. Stahl's works, and I was very impressed also when I saw that, and glad to see that Cambridge Press was working with Dr. Stahl.
He's an amazing man.
Definitely. Kind of switching gears into COVID. I would love to hear personally, and then also for Cambridge University Press, you're based in the UK. How has COVID impacted your day-to-day? Has Cambridge University Press had to go distributed? And then what are some of the actual changes you all have made? Like, are you picking up more COVID-related titles? Obviously, the journal articles probably have had to publish a number of those articles related to COVID. Yeah, just tell us a bit more about that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So for Cambridge University Press, we shut down the office in the UK in the middle of March, and I have only been into the office twice since then, and I've been working from home since then. And as somebody who thought that I would never want to work from home, I've discovered I actually quite enjoy it. The benefits of having my husband bringing me lunch sometimes is really quite nice. So yeah, I think the working from home experience has been obviously different for different people. And I think one of the things that as an employer we've been very conscious of is that whilst for someone like me it's worked fine, I'm very fortunate, I've got space inside and outside. For some of our colleagues it's really not been okay, and people are their personal environments can be quite different, and it puts different stresses and strains on people. And obviously some people just like to be surrounded by other people, so I think it's been challenging. So we've been working from home, and that's been true for our offices around the world. We have 50 offices around the world. Obviously the office in New York where Al is based, they've been working from home for many months as well. Manila, China, etc. In terms of our publishing, you're absolutely right. We have seen an increase in submission to many of our journals, and we have committed to publish COVID-related articles, open access, without charging an open access fee. So for this period until the end of this calendar year. And through that, we've seen a significant increase in in the content that we're receiving to publish it around subject to COVID, both clinical, but also social and economic related articles around COVID. And so that's been significant. And the usage of that content has been massive. We've also published some books. We published one book from the initial conversation with the author through to print and online publication in under 3 months. And for anyone who is not familiar with book publishing times, that is phenomenal. All the way through from conversation, planning, development, contracting, and production, all of that to happen in under 3 months. And again, that really has had such an impact. And I think there are actually some benefits to us as well, because it's helped us really think about our processes in different ways. Well, if we can do it once in 3 months, maybe we can speed up other things on a more regular basis. All of our journal articles that are around COVID, we're publishing within 48 hours, and many of them we're publishing within 24 hours. Again, that just helps us think differently about our processes and speed everything up. We also, in terms of giving access to content, we made all of our textbooks available so that students could access all of our textbooks available online through their institution. So if an institution was a customer of ours in any way, shape or form, we gave them access to our textbooks for free so they could access them, and other collections of our books as well. And we did that through until I think it was the end of May, just to help students and institutions through that really bumpy few months when nobody knew how to get access to materials. And we've created blogs and information about COVID to just look at the pandemic through a number of different lenses. So we've tried to think about this in many, many different ways.
That's fantastic. I mean, all those are things we could spend more time talking about. I think the common theme, though, is how quickly you've adjusted and modified what you do in this condensed amount of time to be able to raise line, as we say, in the age of COVID. Is there any time else in Cambridge University Press's history that people, or in the archives, they talk about this, maybe the 1918 pandemic, the worldwide flu pandemic, or even before that, any lessons that the organization has taken from other Black Swan events like what's happened this year?
That is such a great question, and actually one we've not asked ourselves. So I'm going to go away and think about that. So the answer is definitely no. We haven't drawn lessons from previous pandemics. I think bluntly, the world is so different today, and the way we've needed to respond has been so different, because so much of our response has been around online, and it's been how we've been able to utilize this. I've also seen it in the other publishing groups within the press. So I'm responsible for the academic publishing, but we have ELT and education publishing areas as well, education for schools. And they made loads of materials available for teachers and students available for free. And in a way that you just wouldn't have been able to do even 10 years ago. Many of the things that we've done just wouldn't have been possible. So whilst I'm fascinated now by that question, I don't think we would have been able to draw many lessons.
Yeah, no, I mean, for sure. Things are definitely so different in this context. But I am curious, too, of questions like, do you get more submissions in the year or two after a pandemic where people have to social distance? Is a Newton thing just a fluke, or is that something that happens regularly after pandemics, as an example?
Yeah, and I think we will see more submissions. I think what I'm going to be really interested to see is with some of the sciences where we've seen people still not been able to get back to work normally, are we actually going to see a dip in submissions when they've not been able to carry on some of the lab experiments, for example? Will there be some areas or collaborations that don't happen because people haven't been able to get to conferences? Will there be some areas that actually are slowed down by this and other areas that are sped up? And I think there could be quite an interesting spread that we see.
Yeah, depending on the field and the type, maybe mathematics, is where, unless it's applied mathematics, maybe that's more of an individual thing, and right. Like Newton's field versus, particle physics, where you need to be in the Hadron Collider environment or whatnot. So I know we're coming up in time, but two other questions I had. One is, our audience is millions of current and future healthcare professionals. What advice would you give to someone considering a career in healthcare or even science as a whole to meet the demands of the COVID moment and beyond?
I mean, I think one thing that I find, I think is true for anyone considering a career at all is do something you love. We all have to work so incredibly hard these days. There isn't a career that you get into that you're not going to be pushed to your limits. So make it something you really enjoy and you feel passionate about. And I would imagine that that's true for anybody in the healthcare industry that you're in it because you care and you want to make a difference. But I do think that this is something you have to really enjoy. I think the other thing that I've taken from thinking about my career sometimes is allowing serendipity to play a part and seeing where that takes you. Because, I do think sometimes I've had really interesting conversations with people at a young point in their career who seem to have it all mapped out. And you just think life probably isn't going to work that way. So don't be disappointed if things take a different turn. Just revel in it and enjoy it. But I take my hat off to somebody who is really embarking on a career in medicine today and committing to make a difference. I think that there's such a need for people who are really trying to do something that is going to improve the healthcare of a nation.
That's some excellent advice. I once in college had a lecture by Wolfgang Ketterle, a Nobel laureate in physics, and he was talking about how his career certainly was not A to B linear. It was a zigzag, and he gave it like this wonderful sailing analogy of how he would have to tack and turn. My last question for you is there anything else you want to get across to our audience that I haven't asked yet?
No, I think, clearly I would encourage everyone to look at what we're doing in Cambridge University Press, because I think when I think about how publishing is changing and how we can support medics through our publishing and thinking differently about when and how to publish. I guess that's maybe what I would like people to think about. Rather than always publishing at the end of a process, coming to us when you've got a formed idea, thinking about how we can communicate differently. I think something that as a university press we're really trying to engage with now is the publishing process overall has the potential to change now. And we can think about the products that we create, the services that we offer differently. It doesn't have to just be a digital version of the print products that we had before. There can be quite a different way for us to engage with each other. And that opens up some quite exciting possibilities for the future, I think. So I guess I would just say if people have suggestions or ideas, please come and talk to us because we're always interested to hear them.
That's awesome. That's great that you're so inviting too, because I imagine you guys get inundated with people who want to interact with Cambridge University Press. And so with that, Mandy, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us today.
That's my pleasure. Thank you very much. It's been fun talking to you.
Likewise. And I'm Shiv Vivlani. Thanks to our audience for checking out today's show. And remember to do your part to flatten the curve and raise the line since we're all in this together. Take care.
For more information on how you can help raise the line and flatten the curve, go to osmosis.org/COVID-19. If you like this podcast, please share it on your social channels. You can also subscribe to the series and check out all of our podcasts at osmosis.org/Raise the Line Podcast.